Well, now I want to introduce Martin Brechbiel, Martin MMR. And Martin is going to continue his discussion on Scratch Building Corner. So Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. You're stuck with another O-scale modeler. It's terrible, horrible. Okay, well, there we go. All right. The horror, the horror. Okay. So I left off this photo last week. It disappeared. For anybody who remembers, I'm sure we have adequate memory to go back 168 hours. So there's where the pipe rack goes on McCandless pipe. Finally got that installed and found the photo, and there it is. And that wraps up that build. No, I'm not done tonight. We got another 10 or 12 slides at least. So we're going to back ourselves up over and for a refresher on a quick build of a truss rod car base. And why? Because I'm going to use this a lot. As I think I made a point once upon a time, is that starting with this, I've probably built close to 200 cars from scratch in the last 10 or 12 years, and probably a dozen a year as it is. But we'll just start over just to refresh memories. I have a pile of sticks. Yeah, side end sills, joists, needle beams, car bolsters. And in this particular case, I'm fairly arbitrarily using, oddly enough, HO lumber from Kapler, which, by the way, was bought. So Kapler is not out of business. They're still with us. But this is 10 by 22s and 8 by 22s, or 12 by 22s and 8 by 22s in HO lumber, which is, you can cut that in half roughly, and now you're down to O scale, and it's fairly hefty stuff. And we have bolsters. Those are ones that I cast in resin. And once upon a time, I did a show, an hour or 40 minutes on resin casting. It's fun. It's easy. It's chemistry. And my being a chemist by profession, I don't even think about it. It's second nature. And just to do resin casting. So there's our boards. There's our basic frame, basic parts, and bolsters. There are the size of the pieces right there. The needle beams vary depending on my mood, or how heavy duty a car I'm looking at, or how light duty a car I'm using. Pretty much just grab stuff and go. It's not too complicated. First step, very easy. You build a box, okay? Two ends, two sides, out of the heavier stuff. You build a box. In this case, I'm just using 3x7 decking. I'm using 3x7 because I have a lot of it, and I have no good use for it except to make decking out of it. So that's a good way to make it go away. It's a nice sized piece of wood for decking, though. And it's not 3x6, not 3x8, but okay, it comes out. Oddly enough, it came out pretty close to almost exactly even for this car. Okay, now we get a little challenging. We run the train line through this. So these two center sill pieces, gonna drill a hole, fairly good size hole, probably about a number 55, give or take a little bit. Add an angle, offset in each two pieces, so it helps to bend the train line piece first, and then mark the sticks, drill the hole. I'm using a small hand drill. I mean, this isn't a a small powered hand drill. I'm not going to worry about getting into modeling size tools necessarily. It's one of the nice things about O-scale. You can grab a power tool off the shelf and just drill holes through stuff. You can't see it, but both ends, there's a hole in both ends for that train line to exit. And this is preformed. And down here at the far end, you can see a little difference in color. That's a piece of 3/64 OD brass tubing that's been soldered onto the 32 thousandths wire from Tishi. That gives you a union joint. So you can connect two pieces together without having to use glue or anything. You just and tray a lot over it. You can actually insert it and have an actual union joint, just like you're doing real plumbing. So there we go. Now you can see the ends. That 32 thousandths wires out both ends, excessively so, and more decking. And we add the other joists. And this is where the smaller two joists go in between. And I like to cheat when I build these cars. You can see these marks on the end. The one in the center is the center. These two just happen to coincidentally line up where the screws go for a KD coupler box. Fancy that. How incredibly convenient. And if you split the difference between the two, that's where these two outer ones go. We're done. We're spread across. And you're just gluing this all together with tight bond carpenter's glue. Nothing's fancy or sophisticated here. Finish the decking. And actually, the decking is what holds it all together. Because when I'm tacking that box together to begin with, that's just a little bit of goo to hold it in place. The decking is what really holds it all together. And you've got 60, 70 joints times 6, all with tight bond glue. And that makes a pretty good solid piece of joinery. I've dropped these many times, never broken one. And I got a nice concrete floor in my shop, except when it lands on my foot, which may or may not be harder. Okay, bolsters. I cast these by the dozens. Whenever I'm doing resin casting jobs for other people, I'm pulling out one or four of my molds of bolsters, and all the excess resin gets dumped into these. And I actually sell these to fellow O-scale modelers who are converting 3-rail models to 2-rail, because a lot of the 3-rail cars lack a proper bolster underneath them, and they want to convert it. Very simple. Drill it and tap it for 440. Okay, some people like 256. Some people like 632. I'm going to take the middle road at 440. And nice thing about tapping resin, you can run the tap right through the hole with your hand drill, variable speed hand drill, back, forth 5, 6 times. It's done. It's ready to go. And you can do this after you have glue it to the car if you forget, but it's a lot easier if you don't. Do it now, makes it a lot easier. Okay, we just glue the bolsters in. Needle beams are installed, and there's the basic car. Well, there's a lot of other stuff to add, but that's the basic car. Basic K-brake. Okay, so I know I went over installing K-brake is, June, July, there was a show, so it'll be on YouTube somewhere. Fairly easy to do. Parts are readily available. If they're not, you can make them. The K-brake itself is a resin casting of mine. There's a lot of places to buy those parts from. There's no shortage of that. The clevises are actually the most interesting thing here. I make those out of Grant line turnbuckles that are cord for 25 gauge wire. So it saves a lot of trouble. And if you're going to make one, well, make 5 or 6. There's 4. The truss rods are in. They're not up on the queen post yet, but they are under tension now. So when I lift them up, they're going to be under a lot more tension. These 4 are actually going off to become gondolas. I don't know which one's going to be which gondola. I have to look at the Clover House dry transfers. And if it's a 36-foot car, these aren't all the same size. Some of these are 40 and some are 36 foot. And I have, I think, 2 of each, and I have dry transfers. But we're not even going to talk about those for, well into next year, easily into next year. These are just this is foreshadowing of a distant future, because there's these 4, but then there's 4 more. So these 4 get bumped up close to the top of the list, and there's all different sizes here. As you can tell, these are all different. These are anywhere from 32 foot up to about 38 feet cars. It's a nice thing about scratch building cars. You can make them any size you want. And if you're going to do this, in my case, setting up the assembly line and grinding out 4 at a time or 8 at a time, it's pretty easy. In fact, I think I did 4 of these at the RPM meet back in September, sitting at a table demonstrating how to build stuff. Took me about 6 hours, but I got about this far on 4 cars, and there we go. So they're ready to go. But we're not going to use any of these either. Next week, we'll start with the 9th car, and we're going to build something completely different. And it has nothing to do with John Cleese or Monty Python, but it will be something different. A car unlike anything I've built before, too. So this will be an adventure for everybody, myself included. And I'll see you next week, and we'll get started on that project. Any questions?
I have a question. Martin, the needle beams are what the queen posts are attached to, right?
Yes, they rest upon them.
Why are they called needle beams? Do you know?
Dick, if I know, there's probably a good reason, a good explanation. Somebody probably knows, but it's not me.
Okay, thanks.
I'm amazed I even remember the name of them. Half the time I forget.
Anybody else have any questions? Martin, thanks so very much. See you next week.
Yep.